And what's melting the deep state on this protest issue morphing into riots and looting are the facts. The alternative media has highlighted the fact through actually the Washington Free Beacon that who's funding Antifa, that some people claim is, they're an advocacy group. Oh, come on. Leaked IRS tax returns, this from the Washington Free Beacon, show that billionaire globalist George Soros sent over $1.7 million to Antifa, which can be considered a domestic terrorist organization. According to unredacted tax forms obtained by the Washington Free Beacon, Soros sent the money to an Antifa-linked foundation known as the Center for Community Change Action, a Washington, D.C.-based nonprofit. Now, Soros is good at money laundering. So when they delve further into these IRS documents, George Soros through the Open Society, $1.7 million. W.K. Kellogg Foundation, your cereal company, $3 million. Ford Foundation, cars, $2,350,000. Hillary Clinton through her Onward Together Foundation, $800,000. The premise for these protests, which are fine as long as they're peaceful, and the premise for the riots and looting were based on the mainstream media putting out a false narrative that thousands of minorities are killed across our country every year by police action. Look, are there bad police officers? You bet. Are there bad docs? You bet. Are there bad lawyers? You bet. Are there bad accountants? Are there bad anything? You bet. And part of the problem is that when you try to remove some of those bad actors, because we've created this politically correct milieu and environment, that you can't get rid of the bad actors. That's not by mistake. The deep state is driven. They love bad actors in every profession because they use those bad actors to run more psyops operations to accomplish their goals and objectives of stripping you of your freedoms and liberties and getting control, as much control as they can, of not just the United States, but the world. Let's look at the data as it relates to, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating. The data as it relates to police issues. In recent years, and this is from Larry Elder, police have killed an average of 1,000 Americans per year. Of that, half are white, a quarter are black, and the remainder quarter are from another race. Of the 1,000 deaths by police, less than 4%, 40 total people, involve a white officer on an unarmed black male. Now that's 40 too many on average. That's not just in one city, that's in the entire country in a year's time. 40 too many, I agree. So let's go back to 2015 when Barack Obama was president. Not into 2016 because the election occurred. Let's go to 2015. Barack Obama, the great uniter, right? Yeah, right. Was president 2015. Okay. In a 1-year time frame, 6,095 blacks were murdered in the United States. Of those, 258 blacks were killed by police. Less than 20 of those 258 blacks who were killed by police, less than 20 were unarmed. Unarmed. So you're probably asking the question, wait a minute. If out of 6,100 black murders, and 258 were by police. That means 5,700 blacks were murdered, not by police, but in fact the vast majority by other blacks. You see, if Black Lives Matter was legitimate and really looking out for the health and welfare of the black community, why are they not addressing over 90% of the deaths that are occurring from murder in the black community by other blacks? And this does not include the issue of abortions in the black community and the number of deaths. Over the past 10 years, police officers are 18 times more likely to be killed by a black assailant than an unarmed black being killed by a police officer. This is what the deep state doesn't want you to know. And their little puppet organizations, Antifa and Black Lives Matter. The number one cause of death for a young black male is homicide. 7,400 black males died in a homicide in 2018. 2018 now. This is when Trump's president. Of those, 200 blacks died in an altercation with police. Almost all of those individuals had a weapon. Less than 20. In 2020, 20 unarmed white males have been killed by police, and 10 black males were killed by police. New York City is 23% black, yet 75% of the shootings involve blacks. New York City is 33% white, yet 3% of shootings involve whites. From Rudy Giuliani, in 2019, blacks and Hispanics accounted for 88% of murders and non-negligent manslaughter victims in New York City. From the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the United States government. Interracial violent victimizations, including homicide between black and whites, this is in 2018. Total victimizations, 593,598. Committed by blacks against whites, 537,204, approximately 90%. Committed by whites against blacks, 56,394, less than 10%. These are the statistics the deep state doesn't want you to know about. They want you to join the riots, join the looting, but ignore the data. Alex Newman from the New American Magazine was recently a guest on our platform, and he recently also wrote an article, and he speaks about that. Quote, "The myth of systemic police racism. Consider the fact that over the last year, American police officers shot and killed a total of 9 unarmed black men and 19 unarmed whites. While any innocents killed are too many, when put into perspective, in a nation of 330 million people, that is hardly an epidemic that the bought-off lamestream fake media has spoken about. And it's hardly an epidemic requiring outside intervention. In fact, the same time frame that 19 unarmed whites were killed and 9 unarmed blacks were killed, 89 police officers were killed in our country." In addition, Alex points out, meanwhile, the data show a police officer is 18 times more likely to be killed by a black male than an unarmed black male is to be killed by a police officer. It added that over half of all homicides in America and 60% of robberies were committed by blacks, which explains in part why black Americans are more likely to encounter police. And Alex in his article actually points out an interview, actually a YouTube presentation by a former member of Black Lives Matter, an activist by the name of Shazil Sunz, S-U-N-Z. So if you go to YouTube and type in Shazil, C-H-A-Z-I-E-L, Sunz, S-U-N-Z, you need to watch it. And here's what Alex says. Black activist Shazil Sunz explains that far-left elites who do not care about black people are hoping to manipulate the black community into doing their, quote, dirty work, end quote, and joining a civil war against America on U.S. soil. He also points out that Black Lives Matter is a front for Soros, the Clintons, and other elites, while Antifa is a terrorist group, and they are setting black Americans up for slaughter. Not Alex's words. Former member of Black Lives Matter. So how do you combat something like this? Well, the way you combat it is you try to restore order. President Trump has gotten immense grief for restoring order. This from Matthew Boyle. Trump restored order in America. The White House says that President Donald Trump's decision to push for a surge in National Guard troops in American cities over the past several weeks has paid off. Quote, the streets of America didn't spontaneously become peaceful last week, Alyssa Farah, the White House top communications official, stated. Quote, it was a direct result of President Trump calling on governors and mayors to surge the National Guard in their states and restore law and order on America's streets so that peaceful protesters could demonstrate safely, end quote. Quote, juxtapose Washington, D.C. 2 weekends ago when there was widespread vandalism, property damage, and arson with the past weekend. It was night and day, she stated. That is precisely because President Trump took decisive action to restore the streets of our nation's capital and restore law and order. Before Trump overrode the mayor of Washington, D.C. to bring active duty troops and National Guard from other states into the nation's capital last week, American cities were burning across the country. Widespread looting, property damage, arson, violence, and attacks on police officers and citizens dominated television broadcasts last weekend. A picture that was totally different than peaceful gatherings this past weekend. According to Justice Department, from May 26th until the present, more than 700 law enforcement officers, local, state, and federal, have been injured on the job dealing with these protest riots and civil unrest. From May 29th until at this point, more than 150 federal government buildings were damaged nationwide, according to the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Protective Services. A couple weekends ago, 60 U.S. Secret Service officers were injured, as were 40 National Park Service officers. Trump has made, quote, law and order, end quote, a major theme of his presidency in response to the unrest nationwide, and it appears to be paying off. This past weekend, he withdrew out-of-state National Guard troops from Washington, pulled back active-duty military officials he deployed even earlier. While Washington, D.C. is the only place Trump directly took control, he restored order within a day in the nation's capital. Other jurisdictions that took the president's recommendations, like Minneapolis, Minnesota, quickly returned to normal. Contrast that to what's been occurring in Seattle. The governor who says, there's a problem with this. What's this Chaz thing? I don't know anything about that. This is Governor Inslee. Wake up. In fact, he's being paid by the globalists to be asleep. The mayor of Seattle saying, oh, it's just a street fair. What? It's just a summer of love, she says. Really? According to the Seattle police commissioner, they're getting a huge number of calls inside this country of Chaz, this 6x6 block area that the bought-off lamestream fake media won't talk about. They're getting a huge number of calls for robberies, rapes, and beatings, assaults. Look, much to the chagrin of the deep state, much to the displeasure of the deep state, every American wants safety, which probably explains because President Trump has said, look, this rioting and looting and what's happening in this Chaz, it's all a result of poor administrations. This mayor of Seattle pulled the police out. And look what's happened, mass mayhem. It's off the charts. People that speak outside of what the totalitarians want in this country of Chaz are choked. There's videos of it. Every American wants safety. Black, white, brown, you name the color. Which probably explains why the recent Rasmussen poll that the deep state does not want you to know about, that CNN and MSNBC and the rest of them will never talk about, 40% of blacks in the United States approve of what President Trump has been doing. 40%. Just last year, that approval rating was 26. And the year before that, 19. And what is the deep state's response and what are they pushing for? You know, this Chaz group in Seattle with this country of Chaz, they have demands. And one of the demands that's being made, and in fact what's occurred in Minneapolis, the city council, is not only defunding police, but dissolving police departments. Well, who would want that? The totalitarians. Defund the police? The blue line that separates chaos from safety? Defund it? Dissolve it? In Minneapolis, they're talking about substituting social workers for the police. Now look, I have many friends who are social workers. They're wonderful people. They should not be put in the position of taking the role of police. Social workers should not be in that position for their own safety, let alone the safety of the community. But I turned the rapper, Tupac Shakur, who died in 1996, murdered in Vegas. There was a war, if you will, between the East Coast rappers and the West Coast rappers. Tupac got taken out. I want to play, let's see if we can pull this up. I want to play a clip of Tupac Shakur. This is back in the mid-90s, so 25, 27 years ago. Listen to what Tupac said. This is really, he was way ahead of his time. Take a listen to what he said.
The main thing for us to remember is that the same crime element that white people are scared of, black people are scared of. The same crime element that white people fear, we fear. So we defend ourselves from the same crime element that they scared of. You know what I'm saying? While they waiting for legislation to pass and everything, we next door to the killer. We next door to him, because we up in the projects where it's 80 in the building. All them killers that they letting out, they right there in that building. But it's better, just because we black, we get along with the killers or something? We get along with the rapists because we black and we from the same hood? What is that? We need protection too.
We need protection too. And this is exactly what the deep state doesn't want you to realize. They want to divide races to create not only distrust, but violence. What Tupac said there was true back then. It's true today. It'll be true 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 500 years from now. Maybe that's the reason why they had to get rid of Tupac, huh? He wasn't playing the game that the deep state wanted him to play. So now, the deep state has resorted to photo ops. And they're failing. Go back to the beginning of the year, the State of the Union address. President Trump gave a great address. Actually spoke about the harmony amongst races and the accomplishments of minorities. Talked about Americans that focused on freedom and liberty and advanced our society. And what was the photo op from that? At the end, Nancy Pelosi ripping up that speech. In other words, ripping up the lives of the very people President Trump spoke about in that speech. That photo op backfired big time. So, as we've gotten through this latest psyops, they hit us with another photo op, courtesy of Nancy Pelosi. Passing legislation about the police. Okay, we need to look at these events between police and the public. And we have to institute the rule of law. And if there are changes, fine. But Pelosi decided to create a photo op where they took the document that they had produced and they walked into the hall in the Capitol building and all went on one knee. More on taking a knee in a minute. And they had what they felt was scarves symbolizing their support of Black Lives Matter. And they took a knee of silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the same amount of time that Minneapolis cop who now is going to be brought to justice, what he did to George Floyd. They wanted to create a huge photo op to fan the flames of racial divide and division. This from Zero Hedge. Quote, don't treat Africans like kids, end quote. Black Twitter erupts at Democrats' anti-police bill stunt. In their latest absurd showing of, quote, solidarity, end quote, with Black Lives Matter movement, Nancy Pelosi and a host of Democratic lawmakers took a knee, and get this, donned traditional African garb during a press briefing where they unveiled their new, quote, police reform bill, end quote, that the White House has already said has no chance of passing. Pelosi and company capped off their performance by kneeling in silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the amount of time Floyd was on the ground in police custody. However, as with so many grandstanding virtue-signaling efforts have in the past, this stunt backfired as Black Twitter erupted. Author Asheka posted a video demanding Democrats stop virtue signaling by wearing African cloth in the Capitol. Here's what she said. Quote, excuse me, Democrats. Don't treat Africans like we're children. These fabrics and these colorful things that we have within our culture and tradition, they all mean something to us. I know you look at us and you say, oh, Africans are so cute in all your colorful dresses. Well, some of those dresses and patterns and colors and fabrics actually do mean something to us. End quote. It was insulting. Many of my black friends texted me right when this was happening. Dave, are you watching this? Dave, you need to say something about this. This is absolutely atrocious and insulting. It was universal. And this taking a knee stuff, I've outlined this before on this platform. This country was built on standing on your own 2 feet, addressing the good and addressing the bad on our own 2 feet. The reason why this country gained its independence was because it no longer wanted to be on bended knee to the royalty, to the monarchs in Europe. No human should ever go on bended knee in subservience to another human. It's a different ballgame on a bended knee to a higher power, a non-human higher power. That's a different ballgame. But this taking a knee to another human is against everything this country was built upon and has been made great upon. George Washington, who's getting grief right now, George Washington stated that, quote, "I will die on my feet before I will live on my knees," end quote. That is what our country is about. Standing on our feet. Confronting issues on our feet. When we witness a wrong, not to drop on our knee or knees, but to stand on our own 2 feet and have the courage to confront it, to deal with it, to rectify it, but not to drop on our knees. This other business of tearing down statues, it's reminiscent of what Al-Qaeda did and the Taliban did and ISIS did. All tentacles of the deep state. And now we see Antifa and Black Lives Matter tearing down statues. Look, statues, monuments, remind us of our past. There's good in our past and there's bad in our past. But to remove statues is the removal of history. And it's been said that if you forget history, you're doomed to repeat the past. We need to be cognizant of the good in our history and the bad in our history so that we don't repeat it. I thank you for your time today. I hope you'll join me on our radio show every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. It's free. You stream it at davejanda.com, as I mentioned. But I also hope you become a member of our platform. Without our subscribers, this YouTube channel, the radio show, the website, davejanda.com, would not exist. Become a subscriber, $9 a month. Try it for a month or two. If you don't like it, get rid of it, but I can't imagine why. Because the information you get, you will never see, hear, read, or experience in the bought-off lamestream fake media. Become a member of our freedom family. Go to davejanda.com and subscribe. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.